Hi everyone, this is Mrs. Tevis-Finn recording from room 114. This is Early Battles of World War II and we'll be doing it in 3 parts. So for your guided notes, let's look at the main theme. I chose this picture, to show you the Marines facing the Japanese and, look at these bullet holes. So the weaponry of World War II is something that we have to take into consideration. And it was also, guys, fill in a war on both fronts. So I mean the Atlantic and the Pacific. So this certainly required a change in strategy and in tactics. So the 3 battles we're going to be really focusing on this week, you guys can put down for that introduction that the Battle of Midway really became a turning point for us against the Japanese. It put them on the defensive. And we'll be doing later on in the week the Battle of the Atlantic and the Battle of Stalingrad. And both those were revealing that Germany, as confident as they were in the 1930s, certainly was facing imminent defeat. So those we'll be looking at later on in the week. So let's get right into the fall of the Philippines. So you guys should put down for number 2 that here he is, Chester Nimitz. He is the commander of the U.S. Navy in the Pacific. And for the American fleet, pictured here is one of our aircraft carriers, and I chose this picture for a reason. I want you guys to put down that even though our fleet was badly damaged at Pearl Harbor, our aircraft carriers had been on a mission, and they had been spared. So Nimitz was determined to use the aircraft carriers against the Japanese. So let's go on to number 3. I don't know if you guys remember, but a few hours after the attack on Pearl Harbor, the Japanese attacked the American airfields in the Philippines. So fill that in for number 3. American and Filipino forces were badly outnumbered against the Japanese. Their leader is pictured here in the middle, General Douglas MacArthur. He's the commander. And under desperation, you guys can just put down that they held out for 3 months. He led his men to retreat to this place in the Philippines called the Bataan Peninsula. And so for 3 months they tried to hold on. It was very rough terrain. There was starvation. They ate their horses. They suffered from diseases like malaria and dysentery. Under D, you guys should know that President Roosevelt did not want to have this general captured. He felt it would demoralize the troops and the American public, and so here he was, quote, evacuated. FDR evacuated MacArthur to Australia. He left General Wainwright in charge. And so on April 9th, 1942, American forces surrendered. And they were forced to march. You guys can put down the 78,000 POWs were forced to march. Here in red is the route. It's over 65 miles, and their destination, you guys can put down, is Camp O'Donnell, a POW camp controlled by the Japanese. And lastly, guys, under this number 3 is Corregidor Island. You guys should know that while the Bataan Death March is happening, there is a small force that really held out until May, so another month. And guys, it was made up of mostly Marines and Filipino scouts. And over here, it was nicknamed the Rock. Was one of their forts that they fought back. And so they really made a final effort to fight against the Japanese and surrendered in May 6th of 1942. So, this date I want you to know because what happened is that the Philippines finally fell to the Japanese, and it's considered one of the worst military defeats in U.S. history. Just to recap, when MacArthur was evacuated to Australia, before his own troops had to do the death march, he is known to say, I will return. And so here he, promises, and he does return. And we'll cover that, guys, more towards the end of World War II. So don't forget about MacArthur. He does come back. So here's just a review slide before we get on to number 4. So I want to make sure you guys know who Admiral Chester Nimitz is, the commander of the Filipino and American forces. Douglas MacArthur. We're going to certainly look at pictures now of the Bataan Death March, and it's very significant for you guys to know at the beginning of World War II, the Philippines, we lose to the Japanese, and eventually we will get it back. All right, so let's listen to a survivor's account. Number 4. I just want you guys to, summarize it and then record your reaction there below number 4. So here is from a survivor. They would halt us in front of these big artesian wells so that we could see the water, but they wouldn't let us have any. Anyone that tried to get water was shot or bayoneted, and they were just left there. Finally, it got so bad further along the road that you never got away from the stench of death. There were bodies lying on the road in varying degrees of decomposition, swollen, burst open, maggots crawling by the thousands. So after you guys summarize and react, number 5 is pretty much the same thing. I want you guys to, look at some of these pictures. There'll be several as I advance them, and I want you guys to describe a few and again record your reactions. So here it goes. The march. Remember, they had to carry their dead. Sometimes they were allowed to do that. Sometimes they were not able to take them. They had to leave them. Beheading of a POW. The starvation pictured above, and as well, remember the swelling of the belly is a sign of starvation as well. Some just were left behind. Alright, so pretty powerful images. Like I said, I'd like to know your reactions there below number 5. So number 6, so, does America fight back, and how? So the Doolittle raid is very important to know. So I want you guys to know that President Roosevelt wanted to raise the morale in his troops and in the public, and so he wanted to bomb Tokyo. So that's for number A. You guys should know that for B, American planes could not reach Tokyo. Our aircraft carriers just could not get close enough. So, why? It's for number C, guys, Japanese ships in the North Pacific blocked us from getting too close. And so in early 1942, a big strategy and tactical change comes about. So our aircraft carriers have these short-range bombers that were replaced with long-range B-25 bombers, and I'll show you a picture of them. The reasoning why is so that now they can attack from farther away. You guys should put down for E that these bombers could not land on a short deck, from those aircraft carriers, and so they did have to land in China. So we had to have China as an ally during World War II. Lieutenant Colonel James Doolittle, you guys should put down he's the leader. He commanded the mission, and his aircraft carrier is known as the Hornet. And so they had to use cranes to load 16 B-25s on board his ship called the Hornet. So a crane was used to put them on board. And I'm going to certainly show you the Japanese reaction in just a moment. So here's a great picture of Doolittle with his crew. And this was a huge surprise to the Japanese. Here's their emperor. They were so shocked that, here's the aerial view of the Doolittle raid. And just that we were able to get, to their naval base on shore was huge. We hadn't reached Tokyo yet, but they were very concerned about protecting their emperor, who they believed to be a god. And so this, you guys should know for H, this Doolittle raid convinced Yamamoto to change the Japanese strategy and to now attack Midway, which was the last naval base that Americans possessed. And it was a way to lure the American fleet into battle and to destroy it once and for all. So again, to conclude, guys, Yamamoto is trying to lure us, there's the bell, so I'm out of time, to lure us into battle. So we'll be looking at the big Battle of Midway tomorrow. I'll see you guys. Hope you have a great night.